Hi, I'm Philly McMahon. I'm from Ballymun. I play GAA for Ballymun Kickums and Dublin. Um, and I have a company called B27, and also I'm a co-owner of a company called New.
How are you? Thanks a million, Philly, for taking part in this. Great to chat to you. I love the way you just kind of, I played GA for Ballymun and Dublin. Yeah, 7 All Irelands.
Well, I've been very lucky, yeah. So,
Come here, before we get into all that, as a young lad kind of grown up in Ballymun, like, was the guy kind of always there around you? Or kind of, how did you find that for yourself?
well, I actually started off. I played my first sport was soccer. So I played for Ballymun Town. That was the first team that I played for in soccer, and then that Ballymun Town, I think, merged with Ballymun United. So I started playing soccer, and then because I could play soccer, I started playing GAA in school. We had these little mini leagues, and Paddy Christie at the time was recruiting players to join Ballymun Kickums. And he seen that I could kick a football basically and said, would you like to come up and join? And it snowballed from there. Played from that age, probably maybe 10 or 11, all the way up to where I am now. So when I was 16, I got on the Ballymun Kickums senior team. And so I've been playing nearly 16 years senior football.
Right.
And then obviously when I got to the age of 17 or 18, I started playing for the Dublin Minors, and then played 2 years Dublin 21s, and then was very fortunate to play and still play for the Dublin football and senior team.
I mean, it's gas. You kind of, that all sounds so easy. But I suppose, I mean, at certain points, any young lad's progression, did you get a sense that, this was going to be more serious for you than just kicking the ball around? Did that kind of happen for you early, Philly, or was it kind of a progression thing?
It's a strange one in GAA that you kind of never becomes that serious. Like, it's, people go, Jesus, what's it like to run out in front of the 80-odd thousand people? But it's like, it feels like a norm, because you do it so much as you grow up. It's kind of a certain culture to it. And so for me, it never was one of those things where you kind of go, oh, now we're playing for Dublin, because when you play from the underage levels all the way through, like, I never really bought a Dublin jersey in my life. Like, I've never bought a Dublin jersey. I've always played it. I was never really, I would have went to games with my dad. But I suppose I was more into playing the sport rather than being a kind of a spectator to the sport. Yeah. So it was always, it has always been a sport that I've played because I loved it, not because I wanted to get to certain levels. Because when I played for Dublin originally, I made my debut in 2008. Dublin hadn't won an All Ireland in 16 years, and winning a Leinster at that stage was something big. So for me to progress to where we've got to it's been unbelievable journey. Like,
I mean, people always, people are kind of, like I remember my mother is from Offaly, so I spent most of my kind of summers down there. So I would have grown up kind of, following sport in Offaly, but back in the day. But yeah, I'm from Wicklow, so I'm kind of a bit of now I'm in Dublin, so I'm a bit all over the place. But but people do forget that before Dublin went on this kind of amazing run that you're on, that there was, that they weren't what they are now back in those days, and it was very hard fought to get to where you are now.
Well, I mean, that's why I always say I was very lucky, because if I was born a couple of years earlier and I was a little bit older, I would have missed the whole thing.
Yeah.
I would have missed the whole thing. So, but I always say that there's a huge amount of that has to go plaudits to the generation of players before us that were striving to get to that level, but never made it. Like, because they were the ones that certainly would have, I suppose, laid the pathway down for us to be successful. Like, that pain and suffering they went through, something came from that. So Dublin not winning 16, it's not as if they went out not to win it. Yeah. They went out and tried their best. But what happened then was that the county board obviously said, you know what, we need to do better from the grassroots point of view. We need to put GPOs in the GAA clubs, and we need to develop the clubs, and that will have an impact in the inter-county level. And that's what happened. You know, Paddy Christie went back and done it for my club, and developed the young kids in my area, looked at the energy they had and put that into sport. And that's why we have 6 Dublin players now.
Yeah,
we're probably one of the most represented clubs in the county.
I mean, I think as well, you know, obviously you mentioned grassroots, and obviously where you're from is very important to you, both as a person and as a GA player. But I think, again, from historically, you know, Ballymun's relationship to the city, you know, from its formation back, you know, the new Ballymun, let's say in the kind of 60s to now, in a lot of Dublin life, it's an outlier, or it's kind of has its own stigmas attached to it. But again, that transformation from a cultural point of view, to have, you know, 6 players that are in and around the squad and in and around the teams that are winning 7 All Irelands is an absolutely amazing thing.
Yeah, it's like, for me, when I go talking around the country in GAA clubs, and people know of Ballymun Kickham's because of Dublin players rather than the drugs and the crime, I think that's something good, you know. So as much as those issues and that adversity shaped me, shaped others from Ballymun Kickham's, for us it's a really special thing to have players from the club represent the county. And not only having one player but having 6 is just incredible, and it shows the work the club has done. And those 6 players, let me say, first of all, the 5 other lads, not only are they good footballers and good representatives of Dublin, they're also good people, like, you know. And that's the key thing, that when they go around the community, or when they're in, you know, summer camps or whatever they're doing, that they are good role models, and that the skills, the life skills they develop from Ballymun Kickham's and the coaching that they've got transfers and feeds off into the next generation. Yeah,
I mean, you've spoken about that quite a lot generally in the last, and it's incredible to kind of see, you know, as you emerge as the kind of, you know, a star of Dublin football and kind of Ballymun Kickham's, that both with your own business, which we'll talk about in a minute, but you know, your book and your kind of work around and advocacy for young people and in the area, that seems to come very natural to you. Do you know what I mean? It's not something, it doesn't seem forcefully. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that you kind of about doing good. It's about just a natural thing.
Well, I think it's important when you're looking at developing the social aspect of your life that you're authentic. That really shines through in who you are and what you're trying to achieve. Like, and look, at the end of the day, you're not going to keep everybody happy. For every 100 good things you do, someone's going to still think you're not a good person, regardless. Yeah. That's just their issues. But for me, I suppose I was very lucky to have the situation, and as I said, I always see Ballymun as a community that's given me gifts. I always see my brother's addiction as you know, ultimately I went through a grievance period when he passed, but the benefit of that adversity has given me opportunities to speak on podcasts, to speak on GA clubs, sports clubs, and develop a social aspect of my life, you know. And because there's so much that needs to be done, and it's not just about me. I'm only a small part of the whole addiction area, the whole mental health area. But if I can use my sporting profile to help people, well, then that's the energy I'm going to give the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic attitude to have. But I also find is that a difficult line sometimes for you to kind of, you know, to kind of keep those space, to keep your own personal space personal as well. Because if you're the more you're living in the public profile, I'd imagine that could become very, very difficult.
It can be. I'll give you an example. So, like GAA, it's such a special sport that you can walk down the street and a young kid come up to you and you can sign his jersey. Like, you know, I think that's special. And you're not at that level where you can't be in the public, you know, where like soccer players to an extent, or celebrities from the music world or the arts world might have it differently. GAA is really special that can happen. You can walk in your community and be all right, and it's nice to have that balance. But separating the social stuff you do with your personal stuff can be quite difficult because you can take a lot of emotions on. So I do a lot of work in Mountjoy prison. I have a program in there, and you can take a lot of that stress on, and bring it home with you, and not realise. You know, you can speak to somebody in work or your work colleagues, or even when you're training, and go, where did that come from? Why am I such in a bad mood? Well, not realising them emotions you've took on to speaking to somebody in prison about his trauma. So you got to be aware of those things. You got to be aware of how you're thinking. I think that's very important for me. Some people also get fatigued when they're doing a lot of social work, and for me, it's something that I've done since I'm 17. As you mentioned, I have a gym business, and I've always coached. You know, I've always coached people, and even the stuff I do socially, it's about coaching people. Like, you know, so it's something that's ingrained in me, and I suppose the stress levels I've never really felt because it's something I really enjoy doing.
Yeah. And when you say, you know, like maybe just talk a bit about kind of those programs in Mountjoy and that kind of idea of coaching and mental. I mean, I think there's one thing to kind of, you know, come out and speak openly about your family and your brother, and kind of, you know, write beautifully kind of in your book and speak on podcasts, but then to actually place yourself in that role of, not teacher, but like, you know, that role of, I suppose that role of being that empathetic person to go in there and listen to people. How do you approach that in relation to your work? Like, is it about, you know, like say Mountjoy or kind of other areas of addiction? Is that something that you are there different projects that you kind of have developed, or is it kind of on a one-to-one basis? How does that normally work?
Well, first of all, I'm not the only one to be doing. When you have a loved one who's died from a drug and alcohol related death, the studies have shown that you go through a grieving process of 4 years, and generally around 4 years, and that basically when you have somebody that dies from a drug and alcohol related death, it's very similar to a suicide. It's called a special death. It's the equivalent of 2 deaths. It's that painful, like, you know. So, and you've got all these questions of why and regrets and all this sort of stuff. But generally what comes out the other side of it is that you do see a lot of people going through that experience become activists. And it's the same with people that struggle with drug addiction, or maybe go through the criminality issue. You know, they come out the good end of that and they become recovering addicts. They reintegrate in society. They become social workers because they've got examples. They're experts in that area. And it's a perfect fit for what they want to try to achieve. So for me, I always had in my head, Philly, this is not just about you. This is bigger than you, you know, but do what you can to help the whole area. And that was the difference that I would have seen from me and maybe a lot of others that became activists in the area, was that I had a Spartan profile. That I haven't seen a GAA player that has had a very similar story to me. There's been brilliant GAA players that have come out and spoke about their adversity in addiction. The likes of Oisin McConville was excellent, and there's others as well. But for me, that was the difference, you know. And what I wanted to do then was to try develop something tangible to actually impact society, to impact social inequality, to impact poverty, addiction, mental health. So I have a spectrum to go after.
Yeah.
So I have the end of the spectrum. The end of is Mountjoy Prison. Before that is Halftime Talk, my charity to help high risk youths. And then I'm developing a new project at the minute for early intervention. So basically, what I do in Mountjoy at the minute is I run a leadership program for prisoners, and it's basically it's a program, or I wouldn't really call it a program. I'd call it more a movement, and it's a movement developed by prisoners for prisoners, facilitated by me. So I'm trying to extract all the leadership qualities and mold it within them, so that they first of all improve the culture of the progression unit in Mountjoy Prison. But then when they reintegrate into society, into their communities, which are generally working class communities, that they use their whole story and experiences to help the next generation.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what we're doing. And unfortunately, that's been that's not happened with the lockdown. We haven't been able to get access to the prisoners, so that's been put on hold. Who knows what's going to happen when the lockdown changes? It's not guaranteed, but it'd be a shame if it stopped, because it's been a brilliant program so far.
And Philly, in relation then to your business, because again, there's a kind of a, you know, as obviously there is a health aspect to the business, and kind of the whole health, could it be mental health, physical health, or kind of holistic health, can be the center of all you do. So talk to me about when that kind of idea is for you.
So I've always been into fitness because I play sport, and it was a natural progression for when I finished school to go and do a PLC in health related fitness. It would keep the parents happy. I wasn't very academic in school. I was a class clown. I was the messer. I struggled. I nearly got kicked out of school just before me leaving cert. And I put that actually down to this. This is quite interesting, Mark. I put that down to actually going to school a year younger than all the other pupils in my class.
Right.
I was quite young in terms of my developmental age, you know. So I was going to school, and instead of I had the fear and the lack of confidence within my ability in school academically that I used to mess. And my easy way out was to be put outside the classroom door.
Yeah.
So instead of acting, looking stupid because I didn't know how to do certain maths, or I didn't want to really do English and look stupid, I got put outside the classroom door. And that stayed with me all the way up to my secondary school. But I went and done a PLC course to keep the parents happy. To me, that was a really big step, because I grew up in Ballymun. Not a huge amount of people went on to college, and it was classed as college, PLC. So I went off and done that, and that was brilliant. And it bridged the gap, and it helped me get into the fitness industry. And I started working in gyms. I started working in a gym in Malahide. Started getting on Dublin 21s at that stage, so I needed time off. And I was driving from college to Malahide, and I was nearly falling asleep and behind the car, and I was like, this is too dangerous to get a job close to home. Worked for Ben Dunn in Northwood. Went to Ben Dunn in Northwood, and I said to him, listen, Ben, I'm getting on the Dublin 21s. Can I get a bit of time off? And he says, no. So I says, right, I'm out of here. So he didn't give a shit if I was a Dublin player or not. So I went and worked in DCU, the gym, and I was surrounded by students. And I got to the stage where I said to myself, Philly, the only thing stopping you going and doing a degree is yourself. Go and do it. And I got support off Paddy Christie, Ian Robertson. They obviously had went through the pathway. Niall Moyne I'd spoke to as well. He'd said, look, you have two options here. Go back and repeat your leaving cert, leave your job, go back and repeat your leaving cert. Or wait maybe a year or two and become a mature student.
Yeah.
But that's the only way you're going to get in. So I said, you know what, if I'm going to do it now. Because if I procrastinate and not do it, I probably won't do it. So I went back to the parents and said, I'm going to go back and repeat my leaving cert. I'm going to do a degree. Now, my parents were all supportive. That's maybe not the pathway they took in life. They were more get into work and you know, bring the money into the home. But they were supportive to me. But I said to them, I'm not going to over-rely on you financially. I had this car, and I had a big loan out in the car. Couldn't sell it, I'd lose so much money on it. I was driving into school, repeat me leaving cert, driving an Audi A4. And these pupils are probably going, this fella's a drug dealer, he's a teacher, I don't know what's going on. But repeat me leaving cert anyway. And to get me by, I had €2 a day, and I'd make me sandwiches for the week. €2 get me a drink. I'd get a few bob every week off my mum for petrol, wherever. And they'd obviously give me food and the normal stuff that you'd get at your household. And I suppose I was very lucky because I was struggling through that. There was a perseverance type pressure on me. Like, it was like, you know, Philly, do it. Like, you know, if you do this, you're going to, you know, it's going to be beneficial to you in the long run. So at that stage, a fella got on to me and he said to me, Philly, will you train a GA club team for me? I said, yeah. He said, how much? €60. Have you got a gym? I said, yeah. I hadn't got a gym. I had an attic space in Ballymun Kickham's. Started training them. 3 or 4 women see me train them. They asked, could I train them? And that escalated into the company that I have today, BDU 7.
Wow.
And I went and done a degree, by the way.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, you know, again, that perseverance, that doggedness, and also, I mean, like, all those things align there. You know, from any community, you need a certain amount of things in order to help or facilitate you persevering and kind of doing, but like to have that kind of parental support, to have, I mean, you mentioned Paddy Christie a lot in kind of in different interviews. I mean, like that to have people in your life that you kind of can go to and trust and kind of can see a direction through, but also for yourself to have that. I mean, what you display on the football pitch as well, to have that doggedness that you kind of, you know, that like a dog with a bone, you know, that this is something I'm kind of going for, and to have that perseverance. Was that always there, or was that something that you kind of, you know, you equipped yourself a lot along the way as a young lad?
Well, I'll go as far back, Mark, as my dad and his story. And I can tell you this because he passed away. Like, so my dad was shot in the stomach when he was 16 in West Belfast. He then, it was going to happen, he was going to join the Provisional IRA. He got interned into Long Kesh prison, and he was in the same cage as Bobby Sands. And him and 20 others tried to escape. One of his comrades got shot dead in the escape. And then him and a group of them were in court in Newry jailhouse, and he escaped at the age of 19 or 20. He escaped out the window with, I think it was 9 or 10 others. A few got caught. He didn't. He went on the run from then to when he passed away, you know. And the reason I'm telling you that story is that the conflict he had, his conflict was, I'm going to the Catholic communities where he grew up, basically were struggling with the, you know, with what was happening in terms of the British Army coming in, maybe loyalists in terms of paramilitaries, and he was going to go one way, and a lot of people did go that way, right? So his conflict was the Troubles, United Ireland, fight for his people, fight for the Catholic communities that he represented up there, like other Provisional IRA members. And that passed down into me. Now, I didn't join the Provisional IRA, but I joined Ballymun Kickums. That was my army, you know, and that was my saviour, and that was my way of going a certain way in life. But my troubles is poverty. My troubles is social inequality. The adversity he had in his life, I have adversity in my life. But their values are the same. The values are passed down from him. And I get values from my mother being such a hard-working woman that I'm a workaholic. Sometimes that's a bad thing, but you get these values from our parents. That's where it stems from for me. That perseverance and that thought process of nothing good in life is easy. There's a struggle to everything that's worth in life. Yeah. So whether that be coming from people say, oh, you come from Ballymun, I don't sell that story, Mark, of I came from Ballymun, I was poor. My parents, we weren't poor, we weren't rich, but we had a lot of really things to be grateful for in life. Yeah. And there was a lot more people worse off than us. So for me, I'll more so look at the adversity I had in my life and how the opportunity I seen in that and the outcome of that, rather than going, I was poor, and you know, now I'm this. So, yeah. So for me, when you're talking about that doggedness, I had all of this energy built up inside me, and sport was my vehicle to vent it.
Yeah. Well, it's a great way of putting it, because, you know, I remember actually back in the early days when I was here, there was always this really weird sense of, the people used to say to me, guys, it's an great art centre in Ballymun. You kind of go, sorry, what's that mean exactly? Do you know what I mean? It's a sense of continually othering. Do you know what I mean? It's like sort of that. But I think you're right. An awful lot of what you speak about, an awful lot of what is true about any community is it's a space full of individuals with different experiences in life, different traumas, different, you know, barriers to get through. For you though, I mean, you said that stuff that's pent up inside you and finding the gap pitch. And I suppose when you broke into the senior team, I mean that must be some day for you to kind of go, Jesus, I'm pulling on this jersey now in the Dublin City senior team. Was it like, talk to me about that moment, Philly?
I've only experienced it twice, that feeling of like, you know, Jesus, you're getting to that next level, like, you know, where you're going up the ladder. But I mean, when I was 14, I went over to Nottingham Forest and trials playing soccer, and I remember the week before I going away and everybody chatting to me and going, geez, you're going to be a footballer. And I'm like, nah, I'm just going over to trial, like, it doesn't mean that. But I felt a different energy, and I remember a guy in Ballymun Kickham's one day saying, and I played senior with this guy, and I remember him saying to me, he says, yeah, you'll be on the Dublin team next year. And I was like, I probably won't, but I'll just keep going, because I didn't know how well I was playing for Ballymun Kickham's at that stage. And he says, no, you've got the physical profile, you could definitely do a job down there. I think you'll be called in next year. And I did. It happened from the 21s. My first year in 21s, I got dropped. I played every game up until the championship game against Meath. And the manager came over to me and he said to me, Philly, you're not in the squad. And I was like, what? I thought he was coming over to me to tell me you're marking somebody or you're going to be on the bench and you're coming on. He says, we're not putting you in the squad for the game. And I was just like, oh. The biggest learning I had from that was that I never questioned it. I never asked him why.
Yeah.
And I probably do managers' heads in every time that I'm on the bench nowadays. I go, why? Because it ultimately comes down to me.
Yeah.
And any young sports people kind of looking in on that. Generally, if you're on the bench, you're not doing enough. It's up to you, So I always look at myself first before I point the finger and say to another fella that's on the bench with me, I should be playing, you should be playing. That ego-driven kind of bullshit, I suppose. But for me, I always, from that day, I always asked, why am I not playing first to me? And I'd also ask the manager. Not in a bitchy way, but just in a way that I can learn and grow. And anyway, I didn't play. We got beaten. The next year, Jim Gavin came in. It was his first year managing the Dublin team, Dublin 21s. He made me captain. It was the first year I got on the Dublin senior team in 2008. And I made my debut against Louth in the Leinster Championship. I was 19 at the stage, which was very good to be kind of getting on a senior team at 19 and making your debut was very good. So, but I remember running onto Croke Park that game against Louth in the Leinster Championship, and it was just drained from the energy of the whole thing. I was running around, not realising, reserve your energy, Philly. I was just running around like mad thing, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? Like, I've never felt this before. But you know what? The best part was the sense of pride that I could see in my dad, the sense of pride I could see in my mum, and all the work that they put into me, washing me gear, bringing me to games. I remember my dad bringing me to training. It's probably more so in the soccer side of things, which had an impact on me playing GA, which had an impact on me getting to where I was and where I am now. But I remember we used to walk down to Fairview. I played for Belvedere. I used to walk down to Fairview. He used to walk with me, like. So those little things, when I got to that level, you know what? It was a great feeling for me, but it was much more empowering to see my parents being proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's gas because, an overused phrase is about back, but I think it's really about never leaving. That, and I don't mean never leaving as in never leaving a place, but never changing your attitude. And that sounds like very much what that you still remember being that young lad, going into the school and walking down to Fairview. And I think so I think sometimes we talk about giving back, but it's actually just a kind of tick box thing. That can be ego driven as well, but this kind of sense of just being yourself. And come here, I mean, like, also, the position that you play in, and it's one of the tougher roles from both a physical point of view, but also from a fitness point of view, where you play, and particularly the way GA has kind of changed humongously in the last 15 years, and even from the time that you've been playing, if you look at from like 2008 to now, the change in the way the game has been played, if you look from the Northern dominance through yourselves and then Donegal, like, there's been a massive change, and like, to be still on top of that tactically is a massive thing to have achieved in that such a long career so far.
Well, the full back line is the hardest line in the pitch, and that's probably bias coming from me, but nobody wants to play in the full back line. When you're a kid, you don't go, I want to be a full back. You want to be a forward. You want to be a full forward because they're the ones that are in the papers the most, or in the media the most, or getting the glory. So the full back line is certainly, it's a specialist area. Look, it's the last line in the whole defence. You slip, you make a mistake, it's a goal. It's potentially you lose the game because of it, like, you know. And generally, because there's so many kids and there's so many players that want to be full forwards, your opponent is quite good, like potentially one of the best movement players on the pitch, like, you know. So it's a really, really specialised position, and especially that, like, when you look at it, why did the game tactically change to become more defensive? That's the reason, because we found it very hard to get really good full-backs because nobody wanted to be a full-back. So we had really bad full-back lions in teams, and like Jim McGuinness decided. Jim McGuinness, obviously, I can't speak on behalf of him, but what I'd say is, if Jim McGuinness thought that his full-back line and his half-back line were really strong, he wouldn't have had to go really defensive. So he smartly and tactically said, right, we'll get men behind the ball, decrease the space, but also protect our full back line and our goal.
Yeah.
And then we'll counter. So, and we're very lucky that we have a different style. You know, not lucky, but like we had a manager in Jim Gavin at that point who said, no, we're going to work on being good defenders. We're going to go man to man. And we're going to play the way Dublin should play, which is the expansive type football, really tight markers, win your individual battle. And that's the way the Dublin football style has been over years, like, you know. And so when you're a Dublin full back, there's very little protection, as much as there would have been for any team that played a mass defence. So you got to become a better defender. You got to become technically a good defender. Tactically, you need to be a good defender. You got to do your homework on your opponent. You got to make sure you know him inside out. So that it's a game of chasing, right? So when you have kids chasing, do you want to be the one that's chasing the person, or do you want to be the one that's getting chased? And the one that's getting chased is the forward, and the one that's chasing the guy is the one that's the defender. And the forward is always a step ahead. It's a game of chess. He's always a step ahead because you're reacting to him. And then on top of that, you have linesmen and you have umpires watching you as a defender.
Yeah.
So you're 2 steps behind. So the ball's coming down the pitch. Your forward has all this space to run into. And as soon as he gets that ball, he's right in front of the goal. So either he takes you on or he clips it over the bar. So it's the most difficult position to be in, and you have to be a really smart defender to be good at it.
Yeah, and kind of those minutiae of kind of those moments or those choices or those, you know, because it's like in any sport as well, you know, fouls statistically are going to be called against defenses rather than attackers. Do you know what I mean? And everyone knows that, and everyone that plays the game, when they're clever, knows that as well. Come here, I mean, people talk about the five in a row and the 7 All-Irelands and the Leinsters and in your case as well, the kind of club Dublin and Leinsters. But like Dublin had to work hard for that 5 in a row. I mean, some of those matches, particularly the ones against Mayo, you know, particularly the finals a couple of times and against Kerry recently, like were there moments, Philly, where you're on that pitch going, oh fuck, it's slipping, or were you so driven into it that that didn't even enter your head?
Yeah, well, again, the management team we had in terms of the 5 in a row, they really drilled it into us to stick to the process, you know. Again, personally, I was a part of the team in 2010. We played Cork in the All-Ireland semi-final. 5 points up with maybe 7-8 minutes to go, and Cork bet us. And the one thing that I remember from that was, I remember looking up at the screen and saying to myself, we're going to be an All-Ireland final. We're 5 points up. This is unbelievable. And then within the 5 or 6 minutes, we're out. So that process for me was the key thing for the 5 in a row, like, you know. But it was never about 5 in a row. That's the key thing. It was never about it. It was about the next year, the next game. It was never the next training session.
Yeah.
So when you're so process driven, it's not about 6 in a row, 7 in a row, 10 in a row. Yeah. It's about, I have an opportunity to play football this year. Be grateful and enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm going to try win 7 or 8 in a row because you think that way it's not going to happen.
But you could see that kind of in, let's say a lot of the tighter matches where it came down to the last 10, sometimes the last 1 minute, that any wavering there, I just say any kind of reading tomorrow's newspaper in your head, and you might be screwed, but you're given that, like you were saying in relation to going after the forward, you're given that little millisecond of, and I think it's a testament to the squad you have and to the management team, that precision beyond 5 in a row, like a minute in a row, is kind of held.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, I just can't put into words how much we developed with the management team we had to win the 5 in a row, or to win, I think the lads, I think everybody that speak very highly of what the management team done for us over the years, and the amount of work they put in. And we would have never got to that level unless they done that, Like, we put in serious amount of hours, but they just took it to the next level,
And then, Philly, I won't keep much longer, but I'm interested in sort of on the other side of that, you have Kickham's and kind of, again, amazing achievements in this whole community. Jesus, and those, you could, the sense of colour and pride, and just that must have been a magical feeling as well.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, a lot of people don't realise that Ballymun Kickham's is quite a small club in terms of its membership base, compared to our neighbouring clubs, Nafina, Vincent's, Erin's Oil as well, and Finglas. And, we're still quite small, so we're punching above our weight a lot. And I think people just think that we've got 6 Dublin players that were a big club. We're actually not. We're quite small, like, So with that in mind, we've been, because of Paddy Christie recruiting and developing two teams, which are now the senior team, we've been fighting at the top level since 2012, and we got to an All-Ireland final in 2013, but it was started in 2012, won the Dublin Championship, won the Leinster, got the All-Ireland final in 2013, got beaten. Last kick of the game, we got beaten by St. Bridges or Roscommon. That was quite tough, because we had the whole community there supporting us. It was a really good buzz on the journey towards that. And in many ways, we've kind of tried to get back to that level, but that was probably the wrong mindset to be trying to get to that level. When we got to a Dublin Championship final, I think twice after that, or 3 times after that. So we've got an unbelievable squad. We just it's one of those things that it just needs to click, and I'm hoping this year is that, because every time it clicks and we get to a final, or if we win something, it has a huge repercussion on the community.
Yeah.
It has a real it generates a huge recruitment process that is very important for the Ballymun community.
Yeah. Come here, and I was talking earlier, like, kind of, we're on, where are we? In case people find us on the internet in years to come, it's 6th of August, and I'm on phase, whatever phase it is, on kind of exiting from a
PowerPoint pause. Yeah.
So, like, in relation to that training, you're kind of getting back to training now, and kind of, that is there a sense of things kind of opening up a bit? You can kind of release some of that pent up, non-footballing space.
It's quite difficult, like, like, I played a championship match last night. We were a group, basically. We played 3 games. We played Skerries already at home. We bet them. We played Round Towers of Lusk last night away. We bet them. We played round Thomas Davis in the last game. And you're looking at the game last night and the Skerries game, and you're only allowed to have 200 people to a game. And you're probably going to have 50 of those come from the squad of Ballymun Kickham's and the squad of, let's say, Round Towers of Lusk. And then you've, like, maybe 100 people that want to watch the game, but there's loads that want to watch the game because they're being deprived from it, the sport as well in general. So it's quite difficult, and I'd love to see it broadened out a little bit, that guideline to be broadened out to maybe 400 people, 500 people. Yeah. In the north, you can have 400 people at a game.
Yeah.
Because of the different guidelines. So it's quite tough. And then when you see that, and it kind of that not being broadened out because of us pausing stage 4 or phase 4, you kind of worry for inter-county, So after the group stages, you go to quarter-final, semi-final and final. So that will run off fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So inter-county then starts probably 2 weeks after that. And we'll probably play 2 league games that we have left. And then you go into the Leinster. So it's kind of worrying to think, are we going to have spectators at the games? Because the spectators at the inter-county games make it. They make the energy, It's really important. Especially, we're very lucky to have such a loyal following in terms of the Dublin fans. They travel all over the country with us. So that energy is going to be different,
Yeah. And Philly, before that, last question for you, just in relation to what's Ballymun to you? Like, what does that mean to you now? That, like, what's so special? It's an incredibly special place, but I mean, for you, what is that?
I've been asked it a couple of times, and it might sound cliche, but like, the only words I can put, like, what does Ballymun mean to me? And again, there's people in Ballymun might like me, might like what I do, mightn't like what I do, in terms of what I do for the area. But for me, I always say I am Ballymun, and not that I think I own the area, but everything in me is Ballymun. What I've done in life, who I am, what I will do in life will be because of Ballymun.
Yeah. But that's perfect and a great way to finish. Philly, thanks very, very much, and good luck with all your ventures in football and in business, and hopefully we'll get to see you actually in the flesh on the pitch soon, rather than.
Have me on, Mark.
No worries. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much.